Hey, Courtney, I heard something about drag queen shows requiring sexual abuse and molestation insurance. Is that a real thing?
Unfortunately, yeah, molestation insurance is a real thing, but it ain't drag shows that buy it, it's churches.
Ah, that makes a lot more sense based on the freakishly high number of pedophile pastors I've been seeing in the news.
Hello, and welcome to Moms for Book Liberty.
The podcast where a couple of moms fight back against groups trying to control what our kids can read.
With each episode focusing on a specific book that has found itself on the chopping block of censorship.
It's been a bad news cycle for churches lately.
Oh my God, yeah. Every time I open up talk or the news, there's always at least one or two pastors that have been arrested for sexually molesting or abusing of a child.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a lot about that in this episode because of the negative rhetoric and the false narrative that, all gay people are pedophiles. Like, that's a conspiracy theory that we're going to get into later. But we wanted to start with just kind of the evidence about, I don't know, just the terrible things that church that are coming out with all different kinds of denominations, right?
Yes, and the whole thing about them having insurance, that's actually true.
I did not know that until we started researching this episode.
I don't remember where I heard it, but when I heard it, I was like, wow.
Molestation insurance. What a world.
Imagine churches needing that.
Yeah, and to be clear, drag shows don't use molestation insurance.
Not that I know of.
They don't, they don't need it. And that's what we're going to get into. There was some report where it was a lawyer, a family practicing lawyer here in Florida, and she did a report because, she's got access to all of these things, and so she's been kind of doing her own data digging. And in the past 16 weeks, so in 2023, the past 16 weeks, there were 566 cases or accusations of sexual assault and molestation, and 0 of them involved drag queens.
Right. And you would know if a drag performer assaulted a child, it would be all over the news.
Right.
Fox News would be all over it.
But instead, what is all over the news?
Religious leaders.
Yes.
Youth pastors.
Dear God. I gotta say, as a parent, I'd be more concerned with sending my kid to a youth group these days than letting them watch a drag show at Hamburger Mary's. But the point of that is there are harmless drag shows, and I think that the news cycles and the news feed and people that are just listening to Fox News all the time, they equate the word drag show with something really dangerous and harmful to kids. And in reality, a lot of these drag shows are very harmless.
Right.
There are 18 plus drag shows that are maybe
more burlesque,
but Hamburger Mary's is not like that. But, the point of that is I'd rather go to a Hamburger Mary's and watch a drag show than send my kid to a youth group. That's the unfortunate reality of today. And it's data, right? So we've got all of these reports coming in about, not just one or two pastors, but dozens, hundreds, depending on the denomination.
And these are just the reported ones.
Right.
Did you watch Shiny Happy People?
Oh, yes. That I would urge everyone to watch that. That was just eye-opening about the Duggars, which for our listeners who don't know of the Duggars, our uninformed listeners who don't keep up with any sort of media, the Duggars were that fundamentalist Christian family that had
TLC show, right?
It was a TLC show.
And 19 kids and counting. I think it was the last.
Yeah, I think they stopped at 19 kids, and there was a documentary called Shiny Happy People that revealed all of their secrets. But it was more than just their secrets. It was they talked about the IBLP, but their denomination, I think, was evangelical.
I'm not sure what it was either. I think it is. I think you're right. I just remember I never really watched the show. Did you watch?
Yeah,
the
it was my guilty pleasure when I was younger. I was just wow, this is a train wreck I can't look away from. And I was very interested in their way of life. And TLC did this great job at, that's why it's called Shiny Happy People, of making it look like this happy way of living where they're down to earth and everyone has their own job and
all the kids are well behaved.
Yes, and it makes you wonder, how do they get them to be so well behaved? And the documentary does shed light on
right.
I think they talk about oh, that's right, they talk about the child abuse, and instead of saying do you want a whooping, they'll say, do you need some like guidance? Do I need to take you into the other room and give you some guidance?
Yeah, very
in like
creepy.
a really creepy, sweet voice. And what the cousin, because there was a cousin who grew up with them, but she wasn't as like crazy as they were. But she said, they would like use like glue sticks, those really long glue sticks.
Ooh.
Yeah, as like a way of like spanking. And so that's how they got those 19 kids to behave. Well, not all of them, because we know Josh, the oldest one, did not behave himself. And now
if you don't know, right? And if you don't know, he was molesting his sisters.
Yeah. But that's not why he went to jail. He started out molesting his sisters when he was, I guess, like 13 or so, and they swept that under the rug.
That's right.
Jim Bob, the dad, the patriarch of the family, who's now trying to take over this insane IBLP, which is like a mega church.
Because of the initial leader,
Bill Gothard, who's a fucking creep. He had to step down because of just hundreds of allegations from young women, like girls.
Yeah.
Like,
he had a type, apparently.
Yes, as young as like 14. They would say, oh, he just put his hand on my knee and it would like get closer and closer up my skirt, and I didn't know what to do because like all these girls are taught to just
be submissive.
Yeah. So eventually they found out that he was a fucking creep, and so they kicked him out of his own church, but they kept
all his ideology.
Right. So Bill or Jim Bob from the Duggars, he wants to take over, which is, I don't know, disgusting. But yeah, Jim Bob swept his son's transgressions under the rug because he knows a lot about law, so he knew if he could let the statute of limitations run out, then his son wouldn't get in trouble.
Gross.
So he reported it right at the right time so that like the statute of limitations protected him from having to go to jail.
So gross.
But not to worry, Josh continued to be a creep, and there was the Ashley Madison scandal. Did you hear about that?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. What is Ashley Madison? It's like
that's like a hookup with married men and women.
Oh, okay.
Or where married people go to find hookups.
Yeah, and so he was on that website in that league.
And his wife was pregnant during that time.
Yeah, with like her fourth or fifth or something.
And she's
I don't know.
still with him.
Yes, because that's what the IBLP.
Right.
It was like International Bible something or other life practices. I don't know.
That's her showing him, I guess, mercy.
Yeah. Oh, because she's a mercy giver.
Probably.
Yeah. Because they're also assigned these gifts, right? So most of the women are mercy givers.
Yeah, and the men are
prophets.
Prophets.
Yeah. So the women are supposed to like, absorb all of the, I don't know.
Abuse.
Yeah, they're supposed to be like the burden carriers, and the men are the prophets, speaking the word. So it's really fucked up. But yeah, Josh Duggar is in jail for a long time because he had some, they actually found, evidence of really just disturbing child porn.
Yes.
Agent Gerald Faulkner said the images downloaded by Josh Duggar were among the top 5 of the worst that he'd ever had to examine. And that's his job, is to examine child pornography.
So you could just imagine the kind of sick stuff he was watching.
Yeah, and it was listener discretion is advised for this entire episode. So if this is triggering for you, then you might want to turn it off. But the ages were as young as 18 months old.
Oh, so gross.
We're reporting on this because of what we're seeing in today's society where, gay people and anyone in the queer community is painted to be a groomer.
Right. Or if you support them, because I've been called a groomer too.
Right,
So.
exactly. I've been called a groomer so many times. To the point where my kids are like, Mom, what's a groomer? I shouldn't have to be explaining this to them.
Right.
My son actually got off the bus and told me a story. Did I tell this story on this podcast?
I don't think so, because I haven't heard it.
But he got off the bus and he was like, Mom, so-and-so said that all gay people are child abusers. Is that true? And I was like, no, you know that. He's like, yeah, I know it's not true. And I was like, what'd you say? He's like, well, I told him it wasn't true. But he's like, well, how do you know? And my son was like, well, because my mom told me. And then the kid's like, well, how does your mom know? And my son's like, well, my mom ran for school board.
Aww.
And I was like, okay. And then what'd the kid say? And he was like, well, then the kid said that your mom lost school board.
Oh, what a little shit.
I was like, well, he's not wrong. I did lose. But he is wrong about about saying that all gay people are child abusers. That's wrong. And that is a conspiracy theory that has started because of politicians and propaganda trying to control the narrative in scaring their voters into voting for them.
Yeah, these are the new boogeymen, the bad guys that they're using, and there's no proof.
No,
they never back it up with anything.
But there is proof for the other side about all. So here, let me just tell you about the. Let's just randomly click on one of the articles I have open. It's about. I think it's about the evangelicals. So the evangelical church has tons of child abuse cases. Nearly 400 Southern Baptist leaders, from youth pastors to top ministers, have pleaded guilty or been convicted of sex crimes against more than 700 victims since 1998. according to a recent investigation by the Houston Chronicle and the San Antonio Express News. And the New York Times has an expose, if you have the New York Times, because it's behind a paywall, which I couldn't get, on the sexual abuse crisis of evangelical churches. So at least it's being reported on. At least these, pastors are resigning, but that doesn't mean it's stopped. Like, the conservatives aren't reporting on this. They're reporting on the drag queens and, the queer community being groomers, which is not true.
They're focusing on the wrong thing. Like, it's a distraction, right?
Right.
That's what that is.
Mm-hmm. And the reason, I guess we should say, why are we focusing so much on this in this episode? Because the two books that we're covering are graphic novels. One is called Flamer by Mike Curato, and the other one is called Genderqueer by Maia, Kobabe. Yeah. And they're both graphic novels that...
They're the top two banned in fall of 2022.
Oh, okay. So they're tied for number one.
Yeah, tied for number one.
So we couldn't pick one. So we had to do both of them because they're both tied for number one for the most banned book in 2022. And they both center around, queer characters.
Right.
And they're based on true stories.
Well, one is a memoir, Genderqueer, and then Flamer is...
Based on a true story.
It's a fiction, but it's based on his...
On his character.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they are both excellent books. So yeah, we'll get into those. But before we get into those, we wanted to talk about this conspiracy theory against the queer community.
In Jacksonville, just on the beginning of this month, we had a pastor arrested for child sex battery. And he was released on bond.
He was arrested in 2022.
Oh, yes.
But it's still going on, right? We're trying to keep up with his trial and whatnot?
Yes.
Okay.
He's facing 2 counts of capital sexual battery on a child. His arrest warrant said the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office had been notified of a child abused by Dial in August of 2003, but no court records related to this case exist, meaning no charges were filed, which is why.
Right. Yeah, and one of the things I read that the Baptist churches or the evangelical churches were covering up, these allegations to protect themselves. Hence why they need this molestation insurance.
Right. Yeah, no, that's exactly it. They keep covering their tracks. The thing is, everyone knows, right? We've been talking about the Catholic Church for ages. We know that it's a problem.
And I didn't even mention the Catholic Church because that's
But yet they focus on queer people,
right,
who haven't, there's no proof anywhere. I don't see millions of cases popping up, stories everywhere about them abusing children. I don't know why they're focusing. Don't tell me that you care about kids and keeping them safe, but you're not doing jack shit about this problem.
Exactly. And you know what? I think it is, for what you're describing, is a political tool used to distract, which is why I love the name of the docuseries, Shiny Happy People.
Yeah.
Because it's they're using something shiny to distract you over here when all this other shit is going down over here. So in this example, the shiny objects that they're using are the drag queens.
Right.
They're oh, look at these drag queens. They're, grooming our kids. But the truth of the matter is you've got all these Republican politicians, you've got all of these super conservative, mega churches that are covering up years of sexual abuse. And not only that, the other things that they're distracting us from are, safety in gun control and protecting our students from being shot while they're trying to learn.
Right. The real dangers.
Exactly.
It's no, let's not talk about these real dangers. Let's focus on this bullshit stuff.
Exactly. That doesn't have any, evidence to back it up. And I'm sure, everyone's seen that meme going around. If you're on the internet, if you're on social media, the Wanda Sykes meme.
Oh, yes, yes. Yeah. She says, until a drag queen comes in with a copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, I think.
Yeah.
And kills 8 kids.
We're worried about the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Spot on.
So all of the things that we referenced, we are linking in our show notes. So if you want to learn more about it or just, I don't know, if you don't believe what we're saying is true, we've got the sources, go, do some digging on your own, and these are reliable sources. These are actual reports done by actual organizations that, they're getting their hands dirty and they're trying to bring the truth to the surface.
Right. So Genderqueer, a memoir, came out from Lion Forge Comics, Ani Press, in May 2019. It was a winner of an Alex Award and Stonewall Honor in 2020 and nominated for an Ignatz Award and the Best Graphic Novels for Teens list from YALSA in 2019.
YALSA.
YALSA.
That's, I'm sure it stands for young adult something literary.
Literature,
yeah, okay. That's funny though, YALSA.
YALSA.
So yeah, a heavily awarded graphic novel that is clearly marketed for teens, puberty and up.
Yeah, and I think it's recommended 9th grade and up.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and so those are really important things to consider when reviewing these books. It's the author recommends 9th grade and up. That changes the game here. You have to have a certain maturity level. You have to have a certain context. You have to be going through puberty to understand a book that's about the troubles of going through puberty.
And you had only seen like
Yeah.
some stuff online about the book before reading it.
Yes.
And so we had a conversation where you were like, I don't know how I feel about this book.
I'll be completely honest. All I saw was the one page of the main character, or I would say, the author, because this is their autobiography or memoir.
Memoir,
I should say.
yeah.
This is their memoir. And A had a strap-on dildo. And so that was the only picture that I had seen. So that's, because, that's what's all, if you Google search this book, Google image search, that's like the first image that's going to pop up. And you're like, oh yeah, like, I don't know. I don't want my kids reading a book that like teaches them about strap-on dildos. Like, this is a weird book. But, Jennifer, she encouraged me to read it. Just read the book. Just read the book. So I read it and it gave me the context,
Right.
which is what we've been preaching this entire podcast, is you got to read the whole book to see the context. And I think I love it now, and I was a little hesitant at first because I didn't have that context.
Right. And so that we understand, when you just see what Moms for Liberty or other groups put out, how you can be like, no, I don't want this book. This is why it's so important to read it. And you still might not like it. It still might be something that you feel is not right for your kid.
Right.
But
and in that case, many districts have those parameters set that you can decide what you want your kids to read.
Right.
Not other people's kids.
broken record here.
Yeah.
If you don't like it for your kid, that's fine.
Yeah.
Just don't ban it from our kids.
Right. And, before we get into it, I think that this book would be an excellent book to read in a sexual education course.
Yes.
For those schools and states that actually offer sex education, because our district doesn't offer sex education. But if it did, this would be a great book to read when they're learning about the different identities and things that people can have.
Exactly. And this is something, I'm not very familiar with pronouns and gender identities. And so this helped me learn more about it. And
Yeah.
it's something that as I read more about it, I'm like, okay, I get it. Even if it's something you're dealing with, it'll help you understand other people's lives.
And like what they go through. And I just can't wait to get to the part about the science.
Oh yeah, you really like that part?
I love the science part. Anytime something can be explained scientifically, I just love it. And that happens in this book. It's great. I mean, there's so much evidence and perspective and experience to be explored in this book. Starting with, Air life as a child. I grew up in Northern California in the early 90s, and they have a pretty, for lack of a better word, a hippie upbringing.
Yes. Parents are very, easygoing, laid back, very hippies.
Yeah, there was, compost toilets, no electricity, by choice.
Right.
Right, that was the family's lifestyle. But what stuck out to me was, as a young child, so from the book it says, for many birthdays, I requested snake-themed gifts. My clothes, toys. My parents made sure I could identify which snakes by all the books that I bought. So right at the beginning of the book, they identify as sort of a tomboy.
And even at a young age, right, A fantasizes about having a penis.
Right, yeah. At a very young age, it becomes apparent that do not identify as a girl, and oftentimes fantasize about having a penis. One field trip they were on in third grade, A took off Air's shirt and were asked to put it back on by the teacher, and A didn't understand why. So it just goes to show how innocent these desires or these propensities were for M.
Yeah, it's not, A question why am I being, chastised for this? I haven't done anything wrong. And she didn't understand.
A didn't understand.
A didn't understand.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. One really cool thing about Air development was A couldn't read until they turned 11. But once A started reading, A started reading just anything and everything, and they created this exhaustive list of all the books they've read with charts and graphs, and it just become avid readers. And that's where A learned a lot about these different sorts of identities they could possess.
Right. And this is why A thinks these books are so important to keep.
Exactly. And I would agree,
because even A would say they struggled to find books that
at that age. Yeah, in that time in the early 90s, talking early 90s. Now it's kids are so lucky to have all of these different options, but groups like Moms for Liberty are trying to make it harder to get books like these into the hands of the kids that actually need these kinds of books, so that they feel validated and, that they don't commit suicide, which is something that we'll talk about when we get into Mike Curato's book, Flamer, which is a book that is about suicide prevention. It's not too dramatic to say that these books are saving lives. I truly believe that books like this are saving lives.
I agree.
And that's why it's so important that we protect them. But yeah, let's fast forward to when they get their period and they hide it from Air mom.
Right. Air does not. Air knew what to expect because A had read it in a book. A knew what to expect as far as it would come monthly and things like that. But Air parents were very open, right? I didn't get the impression that they would be someone who Eric could, not go to for information. And A still felt that it needed to be hidden and was afraid to tell their parents.
Exactly. And yeah, you said it best. Like, they weren't afraid of heir parents, but they were afraid of becoming a woman.
Yeah, like this made it real.
Yeah, this was like their biggest fear, becoming a woman. Because from like their earliest experiences and memories, the last thing they wanted to be was a woman. It wasn't necessarily a man, as we find out later in the book.
Right.
Although it did fantasize about having a penis, but it was definitely not a woman.
It says, because of the Alana books, I knew, but I never thought it would happen to me.
What are the Alana books?
Alana the lioness.
Oh, that's right. Because of the Alana books, I knew that a period was inevitable. But yeah, I never thought it would happen to M because they identified not as a female.
Right.
But they're, assigned female at birth, which is a term I learned in reading this book. AFAB, assigned female at birth. Yeah, or AMAB, assigned male at birth. And, that just continues for M as they get older and need like a bra. And then they buy like the tightest fitting ones to act as like a binder. Because, in this time, those things weren't as apparent and well known, and our parents definitely didn't know
about binding.
Yeah, about binding and stuff like that. Which, to our listeners, a binder is something that a assigned female at birth would wear to give the appearance, or to erase the appearance of breasts. And it would be something that the extreme conservative side of the audience would say would be grooming, right? And it's not. It's something that would prevent kids from committing suicide or slipping into a deep, deep depression because they don't identify with their breasts.
And not using the proper binder could be dangerous.
Exactly. So if you take away the proper binders, you're left with these kids that are just trying to get through life. They might resort to dangerous methods for binding.
Right.
And the same goes for gender-affirming care, such as hormone blockers.
Right.
Which are just pills that, kids take before they hit puberty, right?
Right.
To prevent them from hitting puberty. It's not, we're not talking about surgery, but that's what the other side wants you to think.
Yeah, they act like, parents are like, oh, you want to be a boy, you want to be a girl? Okay, I'll take you and we'll go get surgery today.
Yeah, like, let's go chop off your penis. No, that's not what happens. Like, gender-affirming care is as simple as taking a pill.
Right.
That just prevents you from getting hair on your genitals.
Or getting your period.
Or getting a deeper voice.
And they call it abuse, because I had someone just tell me that recently. Oh, it's child abuse. Mm-hmm. You can't just go out and buy these hormones.
No.
They're prescribed by doctors.
And you have to go talk to a therapist for a very long time. I think they talk about that, how long it took for M to actually receive gender-affirming care, because they had to go through the insurance and the therapists, and it took like 6 months to a year.
Yeah, it's not an overnight thing,
Right.
It's not something that's done drastically.
Exactly. So they continue to, on their journey to a teenage. This is like right before they become a teenager, and they talk about not wanting to shave their legs and like being embarrassed at a birthday party when like their girlfriends have like smooth legs, and they wonder if their legs should be smooth, but they decide never to shave their legs and just always wear pants, which is their choice to make.
And I don't like to shave my legs either, so I get it.
Right, shaving your that is the worst fucking ritual that evolved in our society. I hate it.
Yeah.
It's such a pain in the ass.
I don't do it. Like, it's like a once a year thing for me.
I know. I do it very rarely, but like
TMI maybe, but
no. Totally. I mean, I feel like a lot of women are sort of adopting that too. Yeah. That's like, hey, if you're a woman and you don't shave your armpits and you don't shave your legs, can you write in and tell us about like a story or something, or like why you don't, or just something about that, because we want to hear about, from our listeners about that kind of stuff, because I don't know, I think it's just becoming more and more like normal.
Yeah. Because it's just like an extra chore to do, and for what?
I mean,
in 2 days it's back.
Right. And I like shaving my legs and having like smooth skin if I'm going to wear like a dress and go to like a fancy party, but like I go to fancy parties like once every 5 years.
Right. No, I hate doing it and I avoid it. And I am lucky that I don't have like thick hair.
Oh, okay.
So it's not, I think, super noticeable, and I can get away with it, I guess. I don't know if it'd be different if I had thicker
mine
hair,
is pretty thick and dark, so it's pretty noticeable, but I don't know, like it's just one of those silly things. Yeah. It's like when women weren't allowed to wear pants, which was not that long ago. No. It was like looked down upon in society if you wore pants.
There was just my God, what's her name? She was in the love story everybody loves. My memory sucks.
Romeo and Juliet?
No, where they go back and forth from like them old and them young. And
The Notebook?
The Notebook. Thank
Okay.
you.
Oh, yeah, The Notebook. Yeah.
Okay, well, she was just on a cover of a magazine, and she's got her arm up, and she's got all full hair under her arms.
Rachel McAdams.
McAdams,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay. Well, there you go. If Rachel McAdams can't shave her armpits,
right?
I'm not going to either. Sorry, Blake.
Yeah.
I love the part where they get to join the QSA Alliance at their high school.
Yes.
That was pretty cool. So,
and I think that also highlights how important those groups are.
Yes.
So, hello, Florida, get with it.
Right.
They're trying to get rid of these groups.
And they actually are. Like, there used to be one at our local high school. I'm not sure if it's still there. I'm not going to say because I'm not sure. But, like, I remember there was talks about the sponsor being afraid to be the sponsor, which, like, what a world that we live in, that teachers are afraid to sponsor clubs like QSA, which is the Queer Straight Alliance, in fear of losing their job.
Right. And, you know, the people, at least here in our county, will say, well, religious groups don't get to do that. They have religious groups, too, and they are not having this scrutiny of, oh, if you start this group, you know, you're going to go to jail.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, you know, another example of public education being under attack.
Moms for Liberty just has an issue pretty much with every page of this book.
It's not surprising.
Yeah, not surprising. So even in the Queer Straight Alliance group,
they had a problem with that?
Yeah, of course. They had a problem with that. But then also one of the members brought in a news article, and it's about the Central Park Zoo gave an egg to a pair of gay penguins.
We remember that.
And they raised a chick together named Tango. So yeah,
Moms for Liberty had a problem with that. Because they're afraid that they might want to identify as penguins.
You know.
What the hell?
But I just thought it was really funny that even though it was a news article that they shared, you know, and that we just covered this book, so
yeah, that
it was funny.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so I'm not surprised that Moms for Liberty had issue with so many things in this book.
And some of them, you know, I guess are valid because, you know, there were things that jumped out to you.
Right.
And to me, because, you know, some things are hard to, when you're not used to seeing it.
The thing, though, about this book is it's not a book that's written intending to arouse.
Exactly.
It's a book about experiences in puberty and growing up and all that, you know. What's the book we were talking about at Pride Fest? Something about Fury.
Oh, A Court of Mist and Fury.
Yeah, that's a banned or challenged book.
Yeah.
That whole series is challenged, right?
Yeah, and in Flagler County, they removed it, I think.
They weeded it? Yeah. Because I think the consensus there was, that it's not really like young adult or YA?
Right, because the author herself came out and said it's not really intended for as a YA book, but it is marketed as one. So honestly, I didn't think it was very spicy, but like you said, we were discussing this at the Pride Festival, and other people do think it's spicy.
Well, they thought that, like, certain, because it's a series, so they thought certain books were spicier than others. But let me ask you, is that whole series, like, is it intended to arouse? Or, you know, is it like, does it have spicy scenes that you're just like, oh, that was
It's more spicy scenes, right. But it's not the whole point of the book. Like, I just read Haunting Adeline. And that one, I felt, even though it has a storyline, it is more...
Was that a part of the same series?
No, this is a different book, but another, like, popular TikTok book. That one was a little hard for me to read for some things, because it's just not, I don't know, it's got iffy stuff in it, like non-consensual sex.
Oh.
But they like it, sort of thing. So it's...
Not that, see, that would be, in my opinion, not a YA. Like, we don't want YA to read.
It's definitely not a YA.
Like, yeah, like, the example I always use is, 50 Shades of Grey.
Right.
Which I haven't read, so I shouldn't always use that example. But the point of that, like, I don't want to censor 50 Shades of Grey, but, like, it doesn't really, you can't really argue that it has a more of a place in a library than genderqueer, for example.
Right.
Because, like, you know, any book that's whatever, whether it's like fantasy, like, what's the one with the dragon? It's a YA fantasy book where the girl is a dragon.
I didn't finish reading it. I only got halfway through Damsel.
Damsel, yeah. So that's a book, you know, that I wouldn't waste my time arguing to keep Damsel on the shelves or even A Court of Mist and Fury on the shelves over genderqueer, because genderqueer, you know, offers visibility for a lot of, you know, teenagers that haven't had this visibility in the past, that are grappling with these very difficult challenges, you know, sometimes even facing suicide, because it's, you know, it's helping them through a difficult place in their lives. Whereas 50 Shades of Grey or Damsel, it's like, I mean, you know, you can't really identify with being a dragon and then, you know, having sex with the knight in shining armor that like saved you, even though there are scenes in that book where there is not consensual sex.
Right.
But again, the point of this is I wouldn't argue for those kinds of books over genderqueer, because genderqueer sends a really important message.
Right. So you're just saying these books are worth fighting for more than the other ones. Not that the other ones should be banned too, but...
No, I don't think they should be banned, but I don't think they should be in like the school library.
Okay.
Because, and that could just be my unique opinion, but like I think they should be in the public library, you know, in maybe even the young adult section, or, you know, like on library apps. Like I know we've got Hoopla and Kindle Unlimited and Libby and all that stuff. I think they should be on those apps, right? But I understand people's concern with books like, I'm just going to keep using 50 Shades of Grey as an example, being at like a school library, because it's like, what message are they really learning from that? And I mean, the reason that I argue this is because there's a limited number of space for books at these libraries.
Right.
So that's the whole point of our media specialists, is so that they can go and research the best books for our students that are engaging and appealing to those students. That, because the whole goal of libraries and books are to encourage people to read. We want people to read. So I think media specialists are the professionals that know, you know, how to pick out the right books that are engaging and appealing to kids. And a lot of these books are genderqueer and flamer and All Boys Aren't Blue. Yeah. What are some others?
And I know we'll have a difference of opinion here, because I think for that reason Damsel is good too, though, because for someone who likes fantasy stories, they might want to read that one.
Right, but there's so many other fantasy stories out there that you know could engage a young reader in becoming an avid reader that don't involve like a non-consensual sexual act, right?
Right.
So like there's just so many books out there, and I think our media specialists here in Flagler, but also media specialists in general, do a really good job at picking the right books for the limited space that they have on the shelves.
Okay.
And so when it comes to books like genderqueer or flamer, right, or even books like The Bluest Eye or by Toni Morrison, or I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, like those are examples of books that have, you know, depictions of sexual assaults or, you know, any sort of sexual experience, right? But tied to those sexual experiences, whether they're positive or negative, are important lessons, whether they're historical or they teach about consent or consequences or self-respect or whatever. And so I think those books have a more important role than books like Damsel.
Yeah, I didn't finish reading Damsel, so I can't say...
Well, I think that's why it was weeded by the media specialists.
Okay.
So that's what we're in. There are people that differ in this opinion, and I understand, because like I think, you know, we shouldn't even be arguing about which books should be, you know, censored or not, because no books should be censored.
Right.
But I understand, you know, media specialists' process of weeding is what it's called.
Yeah.
So
that one was weeded though, but before it was weeded, it was challenged.
Right.
So that was the only one that kind of, I understand why it was weeded. Like, okay, I get it. But it still bothered me that because it was challenged, it might not have been weeded if it hadn't been challenged.
No, totally. Yeah,
So,
it's exactly, that's a good point, because here we are, you know, in the book banning stage of our lives. And like, we shouldn't have to be talking about this, but
yeah.
But yeah, that book did get weeded because it was challenged, for sure. And it does feel like a loss. But, so I guess I understand both sides of it. I understand the media specialist saying, you know what, we're going to weed this book because, like, I can't defend it.
Right. And I do get that media specialists are in a tough spot.
Right.
Because they're facing, like we've said, criminal charges.
Paperwork, yeah. And so, yeah, criminal charges are a little bit more serious than paperwork. But on top of that, like, they're constantly having to deal with all these challenges instead of doing their real jobs.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's why I didn't harp on it too much, and I was like, I'm just going to let this one go. But yeah, it did bug me a little bit that it was removed, but I get it.
An even better example of 50 Shades of Grey would be the Earth Children series by Jean M. All. And basically, they're like the Valley of the Horses, the Clan of the Cave Bear, the Land of the Painted Caves. So what it is it's not even a young adult, but it was in the high school library when I was a student and when I was a teacher. And it's an anthropological fiction. Historical fiction, so it's like set in hunter-gatherer times, and it's very scientific. So the author did a lot of research in terms of like hunter-gatherer times and the religion, like the deities they worshipped, like Mother Nature, and like they knew about all the plants and animals and all that stuff. So but in between every scene of like flora and fauna was like just the most steamy, passionate cis hetero white sex that you can imagine. So it's like it's like what Christians This is what I would imagine like Christians use as porn.
Okay.
So it's like, and so it's like very like innocent, if you will, right? But those books were removed from the high school library in fear of being challenged by groups like Moms for Liberty.
Okay.
So like, I don't know, maybe you can give your opinion as a mom of teenagers, but like as a mom of soon-to-be teenagers, I wouldn't mind.
Yeah, as a mom of teenagers, honestly, I'm just happy my kids are reading. Read whatever you want. But I don't have readers, so to see them be excited for a book, like my daughter wanted to read Milk and Honey, which just got banned in Broward County. This was years ago. I ran out and bought it. Like, I don't have a problem with them. And there's nothing wrong with that book, to be honest. So there's that issue. But yeah, you want to read a book? Here, take my money. Go buy it.
Right. That's the other argument. Like the flip side argument to what I'm saying is like, I don't care what book it is. I just want them to be reading. Right. And so when I read the Earth Children series, and it was like my first, when I was a teenager, I read like the consensual sex, and it depicted sex as a positive thing that happened not to women, but with women, which I think is really important. But like I could also see, a media specialist saying, I just don't have room on my shelves for all the books. So it's almost like it begs the question, should there be a sex section at a high school library? Because like, so that basically narrows our question down to like, should there just be books that involve sex in school libraries?
In any capacity. So like, if there's any kind of sex scene in it, it goes in this section.
Because so the other side will argue, these are public schools that are paid for with tax dollars. So what are we doing? Sending our kids to school to read about sex and we're paying for it? Like, that's their argument.
And I do get that.
Yeah.
But they also have books about religion, and I don't want your religion, so...
And that's the thing about books is, like, you shouldn't censor any of the books.
Right.
You should have the wide rainbow of your religious books and, your books that are exploring sexual identity and sexual experiences, because they're just books.
Right. And it's not indoctrination if there's a variety of different, not opinions...
perspectives.
Yes, thank you. That's not indoctrination. That's you read it and you determine how you feel about it.
Yeah, that would be like saying, like, if Mein Kampf, the book written by Adolf Hitler, which is, translates into My Struggle, Mein Kampf is at some high school libraries. If, you pick up a book, if you're studying World War II or the Holocaust or Hitler or dictators or whatever, and you read Mein Kampf, does that mean you're going to be a dictator?
Right.
I mean, or like a terrible person like Adolf Hitler.
Plenty of people have read it, and they're not.
Yeah, go ahead and read Mein Kampf. It's not going to turn you into Hitler. Just like reading a book about two gay penguins adopting an egg isn't going to turn you into one, a penguin.
Right.
Or two, a gay penguin.
Right. You're good. You're okay. You could just look at the story and be like, aw, that's cute.
But I guess the point of that rant is I understand media specialists' strategy of weeding. Yeah. And when we say weeding, it's like when you're like WEEDING, like you're weeding out the books that either don't get rented, right? So
yeah.
They'll like stay on the shelves for 5 years and no one's checked it out.
Right. Or they're damaged.
Yeah. Or they're just no longer relevant. Or
the information is wrong.
Right.
Like,
or harmful.
Harmful, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, but we do keep some harmful books on the shelves too, because we have the Zeus books. Seuss. I always say it with the Z. Seuss. And they're still at our schools.
Yeah, we haven't canceled Seuss.
Yeah.
For those that like to use that argument, the liberals canceled Dr. Seuss. There are still lots of Dr. Seuss books at the elementary schools here.
And even the ones that have the racist imagery in them are still still there.
Right. And yeah.
And those are harmful, They are harmful. Because I feel if a child pulls that, and let's say a black child pulls the book and sees them depicted
in a negative way
as a monkey. Yeah. Because that's what the imagery is.
Harmful, yeah.
That's,
So those are examples of how media specialists would, weed those books.
We're talking about a book being harmful, right? Because it has racist imagery. But a book that's talking about someone's bulge or how they masturbate.
So anything to do with sex.
Anything to do with sex doesn't have to be harmful. It's, it's sex education.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good point. And so I think that's what I was trying to say is like I would argue or I would fight for those books more than I would fight for The Land of the Painted Caves or Valley of the Horses. Because, Valley of the Horses is great. And, it is a great book. But if I had to choose, which media specialists oftentimes do have to choose because there's not enough space in these libraries. If I had to choose, I would choose the one that has a lesson or has valuable information,
right,
or accurate information, as opposed to the story that like you can masturbate to.
Right. That
you know
makes
what I mean?
sense. Yeah.
Not that I'm against teenagers masturbating to stories,
right,
like, or to books, because like we've had this discussion. Like, I think reading your porn is healthier than watching your porn.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I'm not a sex therapist, so I'm not going to act like I am. But I mean, what do you think about the dangers of visual porn on like growing teenagers?
I mean, especially I think for girls, well, I guess for boys too, right? It gives you a false expectation of, what sex is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And
sets you up for real disappointment.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, and it also can damage, self-confidence.
Yes.
If boys or girls or non-binary, all people, any sorts of people compare themselves to people in porn, that does not bode well with their self-confidence.
Yeah.
Like, you don't look like that.
100% agree. And this book discusses a lot, not a lot actually, because it's not all that much. A doesn't really enjoy masturbation.
Oh yeah, true.
It's all visual for
or imaginative.
Yes. And even in the whole scene where there's a strap-on, visually, A had the idea that would be pleasurable.
Right.
And then in the moment, A was not really enjoying it.
Right.
And then I thought it was really great that A was able to tell
Air
partner, that A wasn't enjoying it.
Yeah, I thought, and that's exactly what I'm trying to say here, because that scene, the whole strap-on scene, which we might as well just jump into, is a really good example of how this book sends a positive message to teenage readers. It models how you can be disappointed by an experience and communicate with your partner that wasn't the experience that you thought. And also, just to point out, they were in college when this happened.
Yes.
And so we kind of skipped ahead. We skipped from high school. We jumped into college, where they are really exploring their asexuality. So like you said with the masturbation, isn't there a picture with like the calendar?
Yeah, so it says, I've always thought I had a fairly vivid imagination, but around age 16, I felt like I'd run through literally every sexual fantasy. I'd used up all of my material. This led to the first time I gave up wanking. And then there's a calendar of months I wanked.
Wanking is another way of saying masturbating for those listening.
God, I hope they know this, right?
I don't know.
And months with no wanking. No disrespect if you didn't know. Sorry.
It's okay.
In 2005, this hiatus was intentional. But next slide, please. I had 2 more unintentional hiatuses in college.
Okay, so that's really interesting. And it goes to show that, like, there are people out there that don't need it. And throughout this book, they're very specific about not really wanting that physical or that physical component of a relationship, right?
Yeah.
Don't they always talk about just wanting friendships? Like,
more of a mental relationship, not so much physical, right?
Right.
And also, A talks about this with A's sister, and this is where they discuss with each other whether A's ever inserted anything into her vagina.
Oh, is this the vagina slime one?
The vagina slime, yes.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, so I have a really supportive sister, and I really appreciate her sister. And so, yeah, that conversation, like, it was a little cringe.
Yes.
It's like, I can't imagine having a conversation with my sister where I'm like, oh, haven't you ever, like, tasted your vagina slime? Like, which is, I gotta admit, like, in my opinion, like, when I read that, I was like, oh, I mean, I don't think, I've never had that conversation with my sister.
No.
Like, geez.
I don't think I've even had that conversation with my husband.
Right, no, yeah. But when books, do have these conversations, it sort of, like, opens up the conversation and helps individuals explore their sexuality and ask those questions that maybe they're embarrassed to ask.
Exactly.
Like in health class, which doesn't exist in some districts. So one of the most controversial scenes of this book, besides the strap-on, which we'll get into, talk a little bit about Greek mythology, or not Greek mythology, Greek history.
Yes.
Was the bulge scene. So do you want to talk about the bulge scene, Jennifer? What's the bulge?
So the bulge is where A stuffs a sock into the front of their pants. Air pants.
To simulate a penis.
Yes. For years, my standard method of masturbation was stuffing a sock into the front of my pants and manipulating the bulge. This would evolve into hip thrusting while thinking of my latest gay ship. And here's the problematic photo for them. It shows a man laying naked on his back and another man or boy, where they're both the same age.
Yeah, teenagers.
Teenagers laying also naked between the other guy's legs, and they're kissing. Memorably, I got off once while driving just by rubbing the front of my jeans and imagining getting a blowjob.
So again, there's the imagining, right? And so this person is a very imaginative person. And going back to the picture that Moms for Liberty had a problem with, I mean, these are comic pictures. Like, they're drawings. They're not super graphic. They're drawings, right? I mean, you would see more graphic imagery in a biology book.
Yes.
Right? When you're learning about reproductive health and all that stuff.
And they say, like, their buttocks is exposed. It's literally...
It's a butt.
It's like plumber's crack that you see.
Yeah, but I mean, there's lots of butts in this book.
Yeah.
And there's more than just butts. But, I mean, again, it's the human body, right? And it's the human body. In addition to, like, all the problematic scenes that Moms for Liberty and, other people would have a problem with, really the whole crux of this book is about things that we don't really know about.
Right.
Things like androgyny, what it is to be asexual, what it is to be non-binary, all these things that are sort of foreign to us.
Yeah.
And this book does a really good job at explaining these things to people that just either... they just don't know these terms, and they can't identify with these terms.
Right.
And it helps you, I mean, it just builds empathy. It helps you live briefly this person's life and hopefully try and experience what this person was experiencing if you're open-minded.
Right. If you're closed-minded, this is just like, oh my God, get rid of this right now because it's going to turn everybody gay.
Exactly. Or it's going to make every girl want to cut her hair and wear pants and not shave her legs.
Right.
You can't have a bunch of hairy, non-binary... wannabe men running around.
They also had an issue when A mentions, back when Facebook first added more gender options. Wow, there are so many. Custom, agender, androgyny, androgynous, bigender, cisgender, pangender, non-binary, trans. Should I choose one? They had an issue with that whole part.
They were probably like, cisgender? What kind of malarkey is this? Well, I have news for you. You are cisgender.
I love when they get so upset when you call them cis.
Yeah. And they're like, what do you mean, sissy? They don't get
so
it. Yeah.
offended.
Because they don't read enough. Read more.
Yeah. And you know what? I didn't know what it was at first either.
Yeah.
Look it up.
Yeah.
Don't be so offended.
I only knew what it was because it's a biology term.
Yes.
Like, it's Latin for same.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
See, I didn't know that.
Trans is Latin for not same. Different? I don't know. Opposite. No, trans is Latin for opposite.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Or like a cross. It's actually Latin for a cross because it's used in chemistry when describing the position of atoms and molecules. But I won't bore you.
Well, that kind of makes sense, too, because transition, it's used a lot in...
Yeah, so it means across, which is kind of the same as saying, like, opposite.
That makes sense.
Right. And cis means same, or, like, the same side.
Now, androgyny, where does that come from?
So I'm pretty sure, like, Ginny, or Gyn, means, like, gender, or, that kind of topic. But andro means not male specifically, but of being male. Like, kind of being male-like.
Okay.
So... androgyny means like like a female who is male-like.
Okay, I just thought it was like fluid, like neither here nor there. Like you can't tell,
Yeah, it could be like if you're, and that's when you're identify as an androgynous female. Like, I think that's similar to being a non-binary, because non-binary means one or the other, sort of like in between. So an androgynous just means like of male qualities.
Okay.
Yeah. Or masculine, like seemingly masculine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard it used to describe men or males before. That's why. That's where I got the idea that it was just like, we really can't tell just by looking, whether you're a girl, boy, could go either way sort of thing.
Yeah, I think androgyny and masculine can kind of be interchanged a little bit.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
The more you know. Hey.
And so in this book, the main trait A's always been attracted to is androgyny.
Which makes sense. Because A is not attracted to certain qualities, but it's just more the overall person.
Right.
So that makes sense.
And definitely not feminine.
Right. So someone androgynous would definitely, I could see that.
Right.
If you've read the book, it'll make sense.
Yeah.
More sense than I'm making right now.
Oh, and did we talk about at the beginning, like at the beginning of our college class, our college professor said, write down all of your, like all the things you hate in your life?
Yes.
And what did they write? What did A write down?
Okay, so yeah, it says try writing down some of the things you consider your demons. And A wrote girly clothes, getting my period, swimming, bathing suits, boobs. All of these are about gender.
Right. Further drives home the point that they're not feminine.
And that's just a big struggle. A eventually comes to terms with it, right? As they discover they're non-binary.
Yeah.
But it kind of feels like every time there's a reminder of Air's female aspects.
Right. And there's a lot of confusion throughout her life. And it's not until her early adulthood that A figure it out. There's a really cool illustration on page 71, and it depicts a nautilus shell, and Air sitting in the nautilus shell asking all these questions like, Am I a gay boy or am I a straight boy? Am I a bisexual boy? If I was trans, like, am I trans? Like, do I want to be a boy? Wouldn't I be more sure if I was trans? So, like, something that I was confused about, or not confused about, but curious about going into this book is like, why aren't a trans? Like, why don't a transition into a boy?
Right.
And while a hate their breasts and do want, top surgery, they don't want to be a boy.
Right. And even though A fantasizes about having a penis, it's not really...
A doesn't really want a penis.
Right.
Yeah. Or A isn't sure
Right.
if they want a penis. If A want a penis. But it goes on to, the Nautilus illustration goes on to ask, does that mean I'm asexual? If I'm asexual, does my gender even matter? But I don't feel like a girl. What am I? So A is very confused about what A are until A do some soul searching and figure it out eventually. But that, that doesn't come until I think A read that book. And then another really cool illustration in the book depicts like a
scale?
A scale. What are these called? A scale.
I love how you know all like the really like important stuff, and then I can help out with it. It's a scale.
Thank you. I mean, hey, balance, right?
Thank you though, because it helps me feel not so dumb around you.
Oh my gosh, stop. But yeah, I like the scale, right? Because in this picture on page 122, there's like long hair, nail polish, dresses. Like they say, like, if I was born as a boy, I feel like I would dress up like a girl. And so they use the scale to sort of explain how, I don't know.
And that part's really deep because if A had been born a male, A would want to dress like a girl. But A was born a girl and fantasizes about being a boy.
Right.
Showing, like, if that's not clear, like, it's neither one.
Yeah. So this is like and you don't hear about this a lot. You hear about gay men, you hear about lesbian women, you hear about bisexual people.
Trans.
You hear about trans, but you don't hear about whatever this is.
Right.
Right? And I'm still not totally sure what the terminology is. I'm just going to go with non-binary asexual because those are the words that I know right now. But and that's what makes sense to me. But they do explain it once they get into the scientific parts of the book. So it really started making sense to me when we got to the part of the book where they're in college and are, navigating their identity as a person and trying to figure it out. And at this point, I don't think that they have adopted new pronouns. But anyway, they're confiding in a friend, and the friend recommends this book. The book is called Touching the Self as Brain. Touching the Self as Brain.
Touching a nerve.
The book is called Touching a Nerve. I don't know why I had to read the text in between it. That's what you're here for. The book is called Touching a Nerve by Patricia S. Churchland, which explores the questions, where in the physical structures of the brain are morality, empathy, aggression, free will, and identity based? And so you think at first glance it's just like a book about philosophy in the brain, but really it goes in to talk about how the brain develops in utero. So did you know that everyone is born with nipples for a reason? Like, why do men have nipples?
Right, why do they? Yeah.
Because they're females in utero before they become males.
Oh, so they're all girls.
Yes, and we all started as
all
females.
been girls at one time.
Exactly. So, I mean, you could say that, like, all men started out as females, right? And so the basic science behind that is, like a sperm fertilizes an egg, and then you are either XX, which is genetically female, or XY, which is genetically male.
And I've heard just when the whole gender issue comes up and people are arguing that there's like so many different types of genders, or like, I don't want to say genders, but where people are like, oh, it's either XX or XY. And how many are there? Do you know?
In most cases, it's either XY or XX, right? And that's what the other side will argue. Oh, you're either XY or you're XX. Right. That's it. But that's not true.
Yeah. And see, I've heard that.
Yeah.
I've heard that there's different, do you call it genders or just different chromosomes?
That's a good question. I don't know what they call it. I think, yeah, because like if you're not born XY or XX, you're not technically male or female.
Right.
Right. In some cases, you have these like different instances, such as Turner syndrome. Which, did you know that Jamie Lee Curtis from Freaky Friday
and Halloween?
Yeah. So Jamie Lee Curtis has Turner syndrome.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, she has X0 basically, which means she only has one X chromosome, and so that 1 in 5,000 people are born with a solo X called Turner syndrome.
And what does that mean?
So that's a great question. So it basically, she's a female in all other capacities. She cannot have babies.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And so, but she might have like slightly, not she specifically, but people with Turner syndrome, and you see that in Jamie Lee Curtis, they're not like super feminine. Like they're not voluptuous and curvy with like big breasts and things like that. So if you imagine Jamie Lee Curtis, like she's kind of androgynous. Right? But not like super to the point where you'd be like, oh, that's a dude.
No.
Yeah.
Like if you've seen True Lies, she was so hot in that one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she's a sexy lady. So, I mean, yeah, it doesn't make you less sexy for sure.
Right.
Yeah, it's just interesting. Some people are born XXY, and that's actually pretty common. It's 1 in 650 people are born XXY, and that's called Klinefelter syndrome.
And what does that mean?
Well, Klinefelter syndrome, just from when I taught biology years ago, I would teach this, when we were doing our unit on genetics, and I don't know the specifics about it, but they are genetically male. If you have a
I was gonna ask that.
If you have a Y chromosome, you're male.
Okay.
But I mean, what kind of male?
Right.
Has
it changed anything else?
Right. Okay. And then there's one called XYY, and that's called super male syndrome, actually. And it's just like way too much testosterone.
So these are the real alpha males.
Yes. But they also, there's an intellectual disability that goes along with it. But it results in a lot more testosterone and a lot more aggression and violence, which is interesting.
Right. Wow, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
See, I like that you're explaining this to me because I read this part in the book, but I kind of it got a little sciencey for me. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to breeze through this part.
Well, did that make sense? Did I explain it?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, cool. So that's just the beginning. So just reading straight from the book, which is reading straight from touching a nerve. So it's like a book within a book. Wait, hold on. It's a book within a podcast. No, it's a book within a book within a podcast. Like you guys should just get the
feeling
book.
very Inception.
So in the early stages of development, the gonads, right? Which gonads can mean ovaries or testicles.
Okay.
They are in the fetus and they're neutral, which is why we all have nipples, right? But during the second month of fetal development, if you have the Y chromosome, the gonads turn into testicles or testes. And then if you have that extra X, or if you just don't have a Y, you don't have to have two X's to do this. Because
there's the
Turner syndrome. But if you are absent a Y chromosome, then the gonads grow into ovaries, which is the female organs. So testosterone is produced by the testes and released into the bloodstream, which then goes into the brain, and that is where things get interesting. So what is interesting but also confusing about this whole process is we all equate estrogen with like a female hormone, right?
Right.
So males will make stupid jokes like, oh, a lot of estrogen in the room today if they walk into a group full of women or something. But what's interesting is it's estrogen, or it's actually a form of estrogen called estradiol. I think that's how you pronounce it, which is responsible for masculinizing the brain.
Huh.
So it's interesting because this is sort of like a universal hormone. It masculinizes the brain if you're an XY, typically, but it also is the hormone responsible for feminizing the brain. It just depends on if testosterone is present and also our chromosomes. Yes. So it's very complicated, and it's something that should be understood before we go on a witch hunt and, try and tell these people that they're wrong for feeling the way that they feel.
Right. Or just saying there's only XX and XY.
Exactly. So interestingly enough, this book does a good job at sort of scratching the surface of the whole male development. So what happens in utero, in the fetus, in the male fetus specifically, is testes, penis, prostate gland, all the things that go into making a boy happen before the brain becomes masculinized. So, and yes, the brain can become masculinized. And basically what that means is like, you can be born with a penis and testes and a prostate, but you can have a feminine brain.
Okay.
And the reverse could also be true,
right.
But it's not explained in this section of the book.
Right.
I'm sure if you go and get the book, it'll explain it in more detail. But the point of this particular chapter of the book was just saying that like the masculinization of the brain and the development of the sex organs occur at different times.
Right. It says you could have male genitalia and a female brain.
Exactly.
Someone that's born, like I've heard of this, I don't know what it's called, but when they're born and they have either both genitalia or neither.
Yeah.
How do they determine?
Oh, that's so interesting. I'm glad you asked that question. I think the book, I don't know if the book talks about it, but I don't know, somewhere in my head I have this information that, did you know that the clitoris and the penis are made from the same cells in utero?
I have heard that.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. So like depending on all sorts of factors, ranging from if you have a Y chromosome, if you have how many X chromosomes you end up having, and the environmental factors that we don't understand. Like scientists don't totally understand the environmental factors. But it can, let's just say that, you have a fetus and it's on its way to developing as a male. And so the cells that are responsible for making the penis start growing, but then a switch flips due to some unknown environmental factor or genetic factor, we don't know. And that penis stops developing. So it's sort of like in between being a clitoris and being a penis.
Okay.
And same with the gonads, which are either ovaries or testes.
Okay.
So it's like, so this baby could be born with like either a really big clitoris or a really small penis, and either what looks to be like testes that are not fully like testes that are not fully dropped.
Okay.
That could also maybe be ovaries that are too low. Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah.
So it's like the doctor's hypothetically looking at this baby and they're like, well, is that a big clitoris or is that a tiny penis?
Right.
Or are those dropped ovaries or are those underdeveloped testes? I don't know. So that's what in the past it's been called middle sex or intersex.
Okay, that's what, yes.
Sorry, that was a really long way to answer your question. Intersex, I think, is the word. But I just think it's interesting how you can be in that situation. Yeah. So then the doctor has to make a decision, male or female. And then, because the baby can't tell you what their brain is it a feminine brain or is it a masculine brain? Or in the case of Maia Kobabe, is it a non-binary brain?
Right.
Or an androgynous male masculine brain? Or is it a feminist androgynous? I don't know.
Yeah, that's where I get like this whole thing, like, why are people surprised that there are non-binary people out, or that people feel differently than what they've been assigned at birth?
Right. Like, it's not surprising. But I just really like the bit about I just really like the information about the clitoris and the penis developing from the same fetal cells.
Yes.
Which is funny because like a lot of men don't even know where the clitoris is or like what the clitoris is. And it's like, it's so important because that's where all of the nerve endings are. And it's so important that, that there's sex education on this kind of stuff.
So another big issue that they've had, and not just Moms for Liberty, but I've seen it said, in different forums and on reviews, is there's a page where A is having an elaborate fantasy, and it's based on Plato's Symposium. And there's a picture or a drawing of some sort of artwork that exists. And it's what I thought, because I didn't pay that much attention to it, was just two men. One is fondling the other.
Right.
And they're both undressed. And they both have pubic hair, so I also didn't assume one was a child.
Right.
But on Moms for Liberty, they describe it as a grown man touching a young child's penis.
Right.
So, I don't know. To me, I looked at it and I didn't see a boy. That's not where my mind goes, I guess. Right. Which is, not to say that that's where their mind goes, but they always see things like that and say grooming. So Plato's Symposium is Greek history, right? And you know more about this than I do.
I mean, not much more, but yeah, like the Plato Symposium is basically where just a bunch of like these Greek philosophers would just like talk and talk and talk to like show off how smart they were, but like not in like a bad way, sort of like in like a learning sort of way.
Okay.
And so what we're seeing in this picture is sort of like a teacher and a student, but not in like the sadistic way that Moms for Liberty and other groups kind of want us to see it as. Okay. It's more of like a 30-year-old and a 20-year-old, right? And so it's an ancient Greek relationship in which where you've got a man who's sort of bequeathing his knowledge onto sort of a younger student, and in the picture that we're seeing, it's like you said, it's not a boy. He has pubic hair. He is shorter. He's sort of smaller in stature, but I think that's just like the artist's rendition. The artist's rendition of he's slightly younger than the other guy.
Okay,
but it's not a child, so it'd be 18 versus 25 or maybe 30.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe something that I would still consider creepy relationship, but it's not.
But it was Greek history.
Right. It's what happened in
exactly.
history.
Yeah. Okay.
This is just a fantasy Air's having.
Right.
It's after reading about this. So.
And I would assume based on Air reading habits of just reading everything it can get their hands on. They have lots of experience with Greek mythology, Greek history, and all the philosophers, and it would make sense for Air, sexual fantasies to revolve around these intellectual symposiums. And there's a lot of Greek porn out there.
Right.
And it kind of reminds me of the banning of the statue of David in Florida.
Oh, yeah.
Because you could see David's penis.
Right.
And so that statue is...
We were the laughing stock of Italy for a while.
Okay, so basically, I don't know the full story, but there's a school in Florida. Of course, it was an art class, and some parents got pissed because there was a picture of the statue of David, which is, fully naked. And a principal ended up having to resign over the matter.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And then the chair of the school board responded. Oh, I think he was kind of forced into resignation. And the chair of the school board was like, this is not pornographic. Like, so
so this is a good chair.
Yeah, the good chair was like, this is not pornographic. But it was basically the parents. Like, the parents, caused him to resign or something like that. But anyway, it reminds me of that. Because this is just kind of not a misunderstanding of ancient art and ancient Greek, history. But it's like a refusal to learn about ancient Greek history.
When I looked at this, I didn't even catch that one of the men were bigger than the other.
Yeah, when I first saw it, I was like, oh, it's just two men.
Right.
It's just, that's Greek history. There's a lot of that in all sorts of cultures, ancient cultures around the world, not just Greek cultures.
Well, and nudity is not such a big deal in other countries too.
Right.
I feel like here in the United States, we're super oh my God, you can't show breasts, you can't show nipples.
Can't even show a cartoon butt.
Yeah. They have issues with bikinis at the beaches, at the parks. I've heard of friends, I have friends from Brazil. They like their thongs.
Yeah.
Being told
it's just
that,
butt cheeks.
Yeah, it's just butt cheeks.
Yeah.
You need to cover up, or there's children around.
Or even at when I was growing up and even sometimes here, I'll hear of my daughter will be like, oh, I'm not allowed to show my shoulders at school.
That
I'm like, what is sexy about a shoulder?
Yes, we're in Florida. Let them wear tank tops.
Yeah, so she refuses to wear. No, I'm not talking about spaghetti straps. I'm talking about tank tops, where it goes to the edge of your shoulder. She's like, oh no, we're not allowed to show our shoulders. I'm like, that's not true. And she's like, no, it is. So whether it's true or not, that's kind of what she's been told.
Yeah.
And it's just why are we sexualizing our kids by telling them they have to cover their shoulders?
Yeah.
Or short shorts. A third grader has to be worried about how short their fucking shorts are.
Yeah. Don't get me started on dress coding, because
we'll have a whole episode about dress code.
Yeah, that's my pet peeve in schools. Dress codes are ridiculous. Mm-hmm. They're sexist. They body shame. Mm-hmm. Don't get me started. I'll keep going.
We'll save that for another episode. But what else do we need to cover for genderqueer?
Oh, okay.
We need to move on to Flamer. But before we move, I think, wasn't there the last scene of the book in genderqueer where Maia was teaching an art class or a comic class, and Maia was debating whether or not A should tell her students how A identify. At this point in her life, Maia has been, identified as queer and magical. They've adopted this sense of style where they wear floral button-down shirts with feather earrings and lots of different cool patterns, and air pronouns are tagged onto air shirts so that people know air pronouns are EM air, which we should have kind of led with.
Right.
So air pronouns, what's the T? How does the T thing go?
Basically, they draw, not they, but
the way the pronouns are made is it's the ending of the word.
Yes, thank you. That's a better explanation. So instead of there, it's air.
Right.
Instead of they, it's a. And
instead
she,
of him,
he, it's e.
It's m.
That's for them, right?
Oh, it's them. Yeah.
Okay. I'm wait, don't confuse me.
So it is confusing, but there's a good way to remember it about the T, right?
Yes, which has really helped Courtney. I'm still working on it.
So it's ask him what A want in air T. Ask him what A want in air T. So it's just a good way to remember. But I love the ending of the book because it's this picture of Maia in air, magical, queer, colorful outfit, and air happy.
Yeah, I love that picture too. Mm-hmm. The whole outfit, the whole vibe of it. Yeah.
In the last page of the book, air contemplating whether or not A should, tell the kids that A teach, how they identify. And the last thing that Maia says is next time I will come out, which I'm sure A did because A wrote this book.
Yeah. We all know now.
Yeah. A asked themselves, how many of these students that I'm teaching have ever seen a non-binary adult? What if one of these students identifies in a similar way that I do, but, they don't have any role models in their lives? And I could be that role model, but I'm too afraid to come out.
And that's around the age when A started having those feelings.
Exactly. And A didn't have any role models.
Yeah.
But what's kind of sad is they're hesitant about coming out as a non-binary adult because of getting fired.
Yeah, of how the parents would react.
Which, come on. Such a sad world.
So, yep, that kind of wraps up Genderqueer. It's a book that we definitely recommend you read.
Don't judge it just based on the strap-on like I did.
Yeah. Definitely go out and read it. And I'm sure you'll change your mind after reading it.
Definitely. If you're listening to this podcast, you will.
Right.
But if you're not a listener of this podcast, maybe not.
And if you don't like it, don't ban it. Just don't read it.
Exactly.
Don't let your kids read it. That's
It's fine.
Next up is Flamer by Mike Curato. And this is a story about a boy named Aiden who is going into high school, and it's summer, and he's camping out with his Boy Scout troop. So yeah, Aiden is biracial, Filipino and white, and then he's away at summer camp with his Boy Scout troop, the Flaming Arrows, and he finds himself thinking about his roommate a lot, which is
his tent mate.
So yeah, he's questioning a lot of things, but he doesn't think he's gay at that point.
Right.
So yeah, he says, I know I'm not gay. Gay boys like other boys. I hate boys. They're mean and scary, and they're always destroying something or saying something dumb or both. I hate the word gay. It makes me feel unsafe.
And so Mike Curato, this is not a story about him, but he does pull his own life experiences into the book. So it's not a memoir or a biography or anything like that, but it is based on his experiences.
Yeah, I would say so, because even on his website, like, he's got pictures in his Boy Scout uniform and things like that.
What age range does he say this is for? The author. Does he say 14 and up?
Does he say? I didn't see where he said it. Usually Kirkus would say, 12 to 18.
12 to 18. Okay. So 12 and up?
12 and up.
Yeah. I would say 12 is like on the young side of things, but like I can definitely, like, I would probably let my 12-year-old read this.
Yeah. Well, Alex is 11, and I think I'd be okay, like, reading it along with her.
Yeah.
Like I said, they learn a lot on the bus. I know that she's not unfamiliar with a lot of these topics, unfortunately. I thought it was kind of funny because it was like more of boys being boys type of thing than a gay scene or anything like that, when all the boys are in a tent and they're trying to come into a bottle.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was like if you want to, let's just dig right into the controversy. Oh wait, what about the awards?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, before we dig into the controversial scenes of this book, it is an award-winning book.
Yeah, quite a few. So it's got the Lambada Literary 2021 Award for LGBTQ Young Adult. It's a middle grade young adult award, 21st Annual Massachusetts Book Award. 2021 Golden Kite Award honor, illustrated book for older readers, Society of Children's Books, Writers and Illustrators, Best Book of 2020 NPR, Best Graphic YA Book of 2020 Kirkus Reviews, Best Graphic Novel of 2020 School Library Journal, Fanfare 2020 Book List, The Horn Book, Best Books for Teens 2020 New York Public Library, Best Teen Graphic Novels and Manga of 2020 Chicago Public Library, Project Lit Book Club Selection 2020 to 2021, 2021 Maverick Graphic Novels Reading List, the Best Books for Young Readers of 2020 by UPenn Graduate School of Education, the 2020 Nerdies Graphic Novels, 2021 Great Graphic Novels for Teens, this is for the Young Adult Library Services Association, 2021 Rainbow Book List, 2021 Choice Reading List, 2021 Best Books of the Year, 2022 Honor Book by Milwaukee County Teen Book Award, and the 2022 Garden State Teen Book Award by the New Jersey Library Association.
Wow. So that just, this really goes to show that there are more people that defend and uplift these books than there are that try and bring these books down. That was a really long list.
I know,
of
I'm winded.
And, you can't, it takes a lot to get an award as a book. Like, there's lots of books that go published and they do pretty well, but they don't get awards like this. And in this, right on the cover of this book, it says, "This book will save lives." And that was a review by author Jarrett Prozaska, author of National Book Award finalist Hey Kiddo. And so, it really is a suicide prevention book.
Right. At the heart of it, that's what this book is about.
And so it makes you wonder, why are groups like Moms for Liberty trying so hard to keep a suicide prevention book out of the hands of our youth, when we've talked about the mental health statistics? We've talked about how depression and attempted suicides are on the rise in today's society with smartphones and social media and all of the political landscape that we're in. It's really tough to be a kid these days.
There was a representative. She went on and said that her daughter was threatening to kill herself.
The big issues that we have heard today and we've talked about lately is that without surgery, the risk of suicide goes way up. Well, I am one of those parents who lived with a daughter who was suicidal for 3 years. Someone once asked me, wouldn't I just do anything to help save her? And I really had to think. And the answer was no.
Who the hell would say no?
Right.
I would do anything in my power to save her life.
So
except
So her daughter attempted suicide, and
she was suicidal for 3 years. And unfortunately, Moms for Liberty and other groups like that, I've seen like posts around where they've come out and said that the whole suicide thing is not really.
it's like fake news.
Yeah, it's like fake news or it's manipulation.
No.
These kids are not killing themselves.
Yeah, that's
and I'm
terrible.
like, facts are completely the opposite.
I know, it's really hard to, like, how can you stand there and say that, like, how do you think those parents who actually have lost children to suicide
Yes.
or have had to pick up the pieces to a suicide attempt feel when they hear, you know, the dangerous rhetoric that, like, oh, this isn't real. We mentioned briefly earlier in this episode the shiny distraction, the political strategies of distracting their voters with this shiny thing. And in this case, the shiny thing is, oh, drag queens are bad, drag queens are dangerous. Members of the queer community or the LGBTQ plus community are bad and they abuse children. That is the conspiracy theory, the false, dangerous narrative, the shiny object that they're dangling in front of your face to not look at what is actually happening with, the lack of gun control laws, with what we talked about earlier, with the sexual predation and molestation of minors in churches that are being swept under the rug, and with all of these disgusting politicians that pass these bills that are dangerous and harmful to the queer community, yet they're having these homosexual relations behind closed doors. Right. And we have a few examples. So one of those examples was a politician named Mark Foley. I think this was in like 2006. But, he was a congressman who he had to resign because there was just pages and pages of emails of him asking these interns, these high school aged interns, for oral sex and asking for like pictures of their erect penises, inviting them to come to his house for oral sex, and like just all kinds of just terrible grooming, pedophilia. And this is a Republican congressman.
And this happens a lot.
Yes.
It's not a rare...
No, it was not hard to find these examples. Another example was a Republican mayor of Spokane, Washington named Jim West, who faced allegations of sexual misconduct with young men that he believed were like 18 years old in online conversations, but it was actually someone pretending to be an 18-year-old boy, so it was like a sting operation. He resigned as well. And that was just the two that I could find in like a 5-minute Google search. Didn't you find one that wasn't necessarily a homosexual relationship?
No, this one, it's a senator defending 12-year-olds getting married.
Oh, didn't he
adult.
like vote against this bill?
Yes, he voted. This is what it was. It's a trans right bill. I'm sorry, not a trans right. They're voting down gender affirming care. Right? He presented this bill, and so someone on the opposing view said, "You are okay with 12-year-olds getting married. You oppose the bill. You voted to keep that law. You didn't vote against it, so you're okay with that. But then you think it's okay for parents to decide if a child can get married with an adult." But you don't think they can decide whether their child needs gender-affirming care.
And to be clear, gender-affirming care is not bottom surgery or that. Like, it could be as simple as taking a pill to block getting your period or puberty.
Right.
Right.
So here's the soundbite of what that conversation went like.
I've heard you talk about parents' rights to raise their kids how they want. In fact, I just double-checked. You voted no on making it illegal for kids to be married to adults at the age of 12. If their parents consented to it. You said actually that should be the law because it's the parents' right and the kid's right to decide what's best for them to be raped by an adult. Okay?
Do you know any kids who have been
With
married
marriage.
at age 12?
That was the law. You voted not to change it.
Do you know any kids who have been married at age 12?
I don't need to.
I do. And guess what? They're still married.
Gentlemen.
Like, he tried so hard to get that dig in, and he just should have kept his mouth shut.
Yeah, like, oh, they're still married. They're so happily married.
God, what an idiot. And
Like,
that guy's
that makes
name
it
is
okay.
Mike Moon. Is he still a senator?
I think so, because this was recent.
Jesus Christ. Oh, my God.
So who's grooming, right? Like, hello, 12-year-olds getting married to adults. That's okay. We're cool with that.
Yeah, that's grooming right there. And so that just goes back to the shiny distractions. Okay, this is what Ron DeSantis and politicians like him are trying to distract their voters with this dangerous rhetoric.
And where are the groups that are protecting children? Where were they in all this? Silent.
Yeah,
You know,
protecting the 12-year-olds from getting married.
they don't have a problem with this.
Yeah.
Same thing when it comes to abortion and a 9-year-old having to deliver a baby.
Exactly.
Suddenly they don't care about the child anymore.
No.
We're not protecting children.
Yep,
So
exactly. They're protecting the control over women's bodies.
Yes.
Is what they're doing.
So that's why this whole thing that they're protecting children by, banning these books, bullshit.
I mean, it just goes back to books not being what kill children in schools. you know.
But they can save a life.
Yeah, exactly. Books can't kill you, but they can save you. And that is exactly what Flamer does.
Yeah.
I mean, what it can do.
I have a quote from the author, Mike Curato. On his blog, he wrote, "Children are killing themselves because they think they are unlovable, because they think this world is not for them, because they are afraid that if they don't kill themselves, someone else will. I was a child like that, but I chose to stay. And I would like to ask my sweet, beautiful, worthy fellow Flamers to stay. Stay here with me. We can see what happens. It won't all be good, but there is more good in the world than you know."
Oh my God, I just got the goosebumps.
Yeah.
That is such a powerful quote. And I really wish people would open their eyes and really see what the queer community has to go through. Like,
Right.
they don't actually stop and think, like, about the harassment that queer people face on a day-to-day basis. I actually have it pulled up right here, and I've been meaning to talk about it, but it was, it happened in Orlando on June 1st, or not June 1st, it was middle of May. In Orlando, and there was that traffic sign that said "Kill all the gays," and it flashed on one of those digital traffic signs in the early hours of Lake Nona, which is near Orlando, Florida. And like, that's just one small example of what the queer community has to face every day.
Yeah. All they face is, all this negativity from people who just don't want to understand them.
The Nazis in front of Disney, like, they're literally protesting in front of Disney with swastikas and DeSantis flags.
And just saying the nastiest things
Yeah.
where children are going.
Exactly.
Because who goes to Disney?
Yes,
Children.
because Disney is inclusive, and to them, being inclusive and accepting diversity is the same as like, I don't get it. I can't even explain it. And that reminds me too, did you know that Chick-fil-A is now being boycotted by conservatives?
Oh, yes.
Because they put a message on their website that said Chick-fil-A is dedicated to, being inclusive and accepting, or inclusive of all diverse people.
Cracker Barrel too.
Okay.
So, pretty soon they won't have anywhere to
Budweiser.
eat. No beer to drink.
Oh, I saw a meme. It was like, what was it? It was like, all the homophobes are going to die because they're not going to be able to eat or drink anymore.
Yes. Just go be miserable.
Yeah.
You're going to be really miserable now.
You don't get your chicken. You don't get your Budweiser. You can't go to Cracker Barrel anymore.
You're screwed.
Yeah.
That's what you get for being hateful little cunts.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, I would like to echo Mike Curato's sentiment in all the beautiful flamers out there,
Yes.
and asking you to stay, because even though it's hard to see, there is a lot more good in the world than we know.
I agree. And this book is really great at showing that too, because I don't know how to explain it, but if you go through and read this book, you see all the things. He's, like I said, biracial, Filipino and white, so he has to deal with racism as well.
Mm-hmm. And also violence at home.
Yes. Oh, yeah, that was really sad too.
Yeah. So it's visibility for biracial kids, teenagers, as well as so many teenagers who are dealing with this domestic violence
Right.
situation in their homes and yelling and...
Yeah, who just don't have a great home life.
So this book isn't just for gay kids. Like,
Right.
you could be a biracial kid and read this and see visibility and find strength and comfort. And you can also be a kid who struggles with domestic violence at home. And
Or body images.
Yeah. Oh, he has body images.
Yeah.
That's right.
There's just so much. This book has so many good things. And yeah, there's some scenes in here that might be what people would call questionable, but
Yeah.
they're relatable. This is how, this is the stuff kids do.
So 12, 13 is around the age when boys start masturbating. And, unfortunately, I hate to be the one to break it to you guys, but boys, kids, just not just boys in general, just kids around this age, like middle school kids,
Yeah.
like, they can be really gross and really weird.
Really weird.
And so
And we're talking about the straight kids.
yeah, these are the straight kids that were masturbating into the bottles. And, because it's like this newfound thing that they discovered. It's human nature to be curious and to explore that part
Right.
of your body. But, it doesn't make it not gross.
Right.
So, yeah, that was one of the controversial scenes I'm sure that Moms for Liberty had a problem with. There was another scene that goes back to Aiden, the main character, saying, how can I be gay? All boys are gross and disgusting and they're mean. In which they were, like, playing with the hot dogs and the buns. And they put it in
Yes.
between their legs. And they're like, oh, slide your hot dog into my buns.
Yes, yes.
Which I was like, that's so crass.
Right, but
You know?
it's very on brand for teenage boys and girls,
Lord,
teenagers.
Lord help me. Growing up with just sisters, it's new to me.
Right, and some of them don't grow out of it, because
It takes a while.
Yeah.
They grow out of it when they get into their 30s, maybe, if you're lucky. But yeah, so this book is all based in summer camp and in the Boy Scouts. And this was sort of at a time where it was like similar to the military, where it was like, don't ask, don't tell.
yes,
Like, you can't come out and be gay in the Boy Scouts without being kicked out. Because there's a camp counselor that he looks up to who is gay. We don't know it at the time,
Right.
but like he's a little different. Like he wears his hair, he like styles his hair and wears an earring, and he's like really cool and he's
Right.
accepting and nice. Well, he gets fired.
And the adults are talking about it where the kids can hear.
So the kids, all the message that gets sent is to the kids is like, oh, well, he's fired for being gay. Oh, because they thought the adults were saying, well, he could have like molested someone.
Right.
And that goes back to the conspiracy theory that all gay people are child molesters.
Yeah.
There's so much research that exists about child molestation and the LGBTQ community that I didn't know about, but I'll link, everything that I reference into our show notes for you to read. But less than 10% of sexual assault victims are abused by strangers, okay? Meaning that 90% know they're abusers.
Yeah.
So it's not like a random drag queen or like a random queer person off the street that's like targeting these like innocent children
In the
at a
bathroom.
playground. Yeah, or thank you, in the bathroom.
Yeah.
But groups like Moms for Liberty and Ron DeSantis want you to think that drag queens and gay teachers and books are grooming our kids, but really the data shows it's most likely a family member.
Right.
Or a family friend or something, right?
Youth pastor.
Or a youth pastor, which is a family friend. And interestingly enough, more girls are abused than boys, okay? Which I think we all kind of knew,
Yeah.
right? I think it's like 1 in 4 girls are abused versus like 1 in 6 boys are abused. And 96% of sexual abusers are male. So right off the bat, what does that tell you?
This is a male problem.
Yeah, and it's males abusing girls, which is not homosexual. It's wrong, but it's not a homosexual abusive
Yes.
relationship. It's not what we're being fed. And even further, so I already said 96% of the abusers are male. 76% of those 96% are heterosexual married men. So these are men that are in heterosexual, and this is data that they have collected. And again, I'll link it in the show notes, but they're married to women.
Right.
And they're abusing, boys and girls.
Yeah.
But the statistics show that it's more girls are being abused
Right.
than boys. So that proves that this is not a LGBTQ issue.
Right.
This is a male issue.
Yeah.
So
This is why we fear men
exactly.
and
yeah.
not gay men.
Exactly. Yeah, we've talked about that before.
Yeah.
Like if I'm going to choose, like if I'm hitchhiking because I'm stranded and I have the choice between a straight man and a gay man to get into the
Yeah.
car, I'm going to take the gay man every damn day of the week.
Yeah.
And, not just, maybe that is just because I'm a woman, but like.
No, I get that because we're fearful of men. And the stats show that we have a good reason to be.
Yeah.
Because it's very likely that if we're around an unknown man or maybe a known man, because a lot of, like you said, a lot of times your rapist is someone you know. And this is something I tell my girls all the time. Like, don't trust your friends.
Yeah.
Don't
yeah.
let your friends grab you a drink. But yeah, this is why. Because they will take advantage.
And that's not to say that there aren't like random attacks, from strangers or like in home invasions that aren't related.
Right.
Of course it's just the data does show that it's not a queer problem.
No. And we're not saying that it doesn't exist, that a gay person is incapable of doing this.
Exactly.
It's just that it's not the problem y'all are making it out to be.
So to further support the fact that this conspiracy theory against the queer community is just complete bullshit, in August of 2022, there was a report done by the American Human Rights Campaign and the British Center for Countering Digital Hate that revealed some really astonishing facts, which is hard to do these days. Basically, what the study revealed is that there were grooming tweets, like tweets that were like anti-LGBTQ, that were about all gays are groomers, like those kinds of
Yeah.
tweets. 48 million tweets, right, were traced back to 10 Twitter accounts.
Oh.
So there were 10 powerful Twitter influencers that were responsible for these harmful anti-gay
So this was a
tweets.
campaign.
Yes.
This was an intentional attack against.
I'm pretty sure it's called propaganda.
Yes.
But yes, exactly. And Facebook, not surprisingly, accepted $25,000 in ads that targeted the homosexual community as groomers.
Wow.
Not surprising.
No.
Lastly, right after our good friend DeSantis passed his famous Don't Say Gay law, which launched him into his presidential campaign, which he is already losing very badly.
I'd love to see it.
But after he passed the Don't Say Gay law, there was a 406% increase in tweets referring to the LGBTQ community being predators and pedophiles.
Wow.
So it was just directly connected
Yeah.
to the Don't Say Gay law. I mean, that just goes to show the political influence that they have on their voters.
Yeah, you guys are being used as pawns. And Moms for Liberty, that has a lot of money behind them. They are not a grassroots organization.
No.
And I almost feel bad for like the local chapters because they're being used.
Yeah, and there are some really nice women that I've
Yes.
met in our local chapter that like genuinely do think they're saving children.
Yeah, I think that their sentiment is genuine.
Yeah.
But but they're just being used.
Yeah.
And, you know, because you're being used, unfortunately, like now I have a problem with you. But before that, I did think you guys were really nice people too.
Yeah. Like I've had conversations with a few of them and their sentiment is real.
Yeah. They're genuine, but they don't realize they're being used.
No, I don't think so. I don't think anyone realizes they're being used, really.
Yeah.
Until it's way too late. But of course, you know, they're just going to say that we're just saying that and that we're being used by the other side.
Right.
But really, when you get to a stalemate such as this, and it's like, you're being used. No, you're being used. What do? You look at the data. And what does the data point to? Youth pastors, Republican politicians. Those are the groomers and the pedophiles and the molesters that we need to be worrying about.
Yeah.
Guns kill kids, not books.
The real issues.
These
like,
are the data.
ignoring it.
Yeah. Just look at the data. But they have a problem with science.
Right. And they just discount it as fake news or propaganda. Turn on the TV and you'll see that there's another shooting
not Fox
at a school.
News.
No, please not.
Yeah, they won't cover that.
What frustrates me more, though, is that they're able to advance their goals. Like, they're getting books banned.
No. Well, it's because they're the loud minority.
Yeah.
And we need to start being the loud majority. Because we've been the silent majority for so long.
And we're starting to.
Yeah.
Like, people are waking up and they're like, okay, I'm going to show up at the board meetings. I'm going to speak out. And I feel like we're starting to see a shift.
Yeah, especially our generation of moms. Because, you know, the what are they? The Gen Z? The young ones? Because they're the fuck around and find out generation, for sure. And I love it. I love to hear about it. But, you know, that doesn't mean that, like, we can't do anything.
Right.
And so that's why we started this podcast. But yeah, anyway, what were we talking about with the book?
So we were talking about how it's a book about suicide, right? That they discuss racism. There's discussions of body images, not body images.
Body image issues.
Issues, thank you. And just, it's a coming of age book.
We were also talking about some of the more controversial scenes.
Right.
So we talked about the one where they were jacking off into bottles, which was really gross, but also typical. But then there's a scene where he talks about how when he first found porn for the first time.
Oh, yes.
And so to me, as a mom, I'm like, well, you know, I have a kid who's really curious and they want to read all the banned books. And I'm just being honest here. Like, as a parent, if my 12-year-old got a hold of this and saw this, then playing devil's advocate here, I'll be Moms for Liberty. What if they saw this and they're like, oh, you can watch porn on the computer. I'm going to go look at that right now. You know, what do you think?
I'd be surprised if they didn't already know what porn was.
Right.
Because like I said, my 10-year-old has heard of porn on the bus.
Yeah.
It's been shown.
I think, you know what? We watch Modern Family.
Yeah.
And I think she actually does know what porn is because she asked me, and I was like, where'd you hear that? She was like, Modern Family. And I was like, oh shit.
That was me.
And so it's like, but she doesn't quite fully grasp it.
Yes.
She doesn't know what it is. But like, when you get older, I think you put the pieces together.
Right.
But you're right. The point is, you can't shelter them their entire lives. Like, you can't keep them from finding these things out, which is why you should have these conversations.
Right. I'd rather explain what it is, give them a better idea, you know, age-appropriate details, then they actually go search for it and get non-age-appropriate details.
And if it's in a book, you could be like, oh, what book are you reading?
Exactly.
Then you could go check out the same exact copy of the book and read it and be like, oh, I really liked the part where they did blah, blah, blah. Or do you have any questions about this part where he's watching porn? And then, you know, you're starting a conversation with your kid and, you know, maybe you're intervening before they make a decision to go look for porn on their computer.
Exactly.
But for our listeners, you know, there is a scene where he talks about where he discovered what masturbation was when he found his dad's porn. And, you know, it's funny because he's like watching the TV and he's like, oh my God, why is there so much hair? Why are those dicks so big? You know, like, and then this is when he realized he was turned on by males.
Yes.
And so that begins his journey of, am I gay?
And it also goes back to reinforcing that porn gives us a unrealistic
expectations.
Yes.
Yes. But you know what I just thought of? He's watching his dad's heterosexual porn, and it's not making him
straight
heterosexual. Right. Yeah. It's, if anything, it's like he's not watching gay porn. That's not what's because it says in the book like it's his dad's porn. But yeah, one of the controversial scenes is he stumbles upon his dad's porn and that's when he learns about masturbation, which, not for nothing, masturbation is a very important physiological thing for all people to partake in, either that or sex. But, you know, if you're a teenager, you shouldn't really be having sex.
Right.
Or a preteen in this case. You know, masturbation is actually been clinically proven to reduce stress and anxiety and to regulate your body systems. And it actually just it attributes to your overall health. So, but in our society, it's become shameful So masturbation is healthy.
And in that scene too, he feels guilt for masturbating.
Yeah.
And it goes back to religion because he's Catholic.
Yeah. Well, anywhere in this country, like, masturbation is evil. Like, we've
Right.
talked about that before, and it shouldn't be. If anything, a healthy sense of masturbation can prevent you from having sex when you're not ready, or getting an STD, or getting pregnant.
Or abusing your sisters, because I think this is what brings us back to the
Exactly.
Duggars.
Yes.
And it's this unhealthy, like, you can't talk about sex, you can't know about sex, and because they can never explore,
Exactly.
they end up doing
And that's
kind
what
of
happened
stuff.
with Josh Duggar. He was like a 16-year-old who had never been allowed to masturbate because he's been shamed into it. And like, he just comes out as molesting his sisters,
Yeah.
because he was also taught that men have this power over women. So in his
Exactly.
mind, he's like, oh, well, if I can't masturbate, then I'll just dominate my sisters, which is disgusting.
I'm entitled to this.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, so those are some of the controversial scenes. I think we covered all of them. Like, in terms of the sexual controversial scenes, it was jacking off into a bottle.
Yeah.
The porn masturbation one, and then like the hot dog and the buns.
Yeah, I think those were like the main like
That was it.
off-puttish scenes that,
Yeah.
that they would have. They also had a problem with the scene where they're all taking a shower, which
yeah.
that's just normal group
Right.
showers
Yeah.
at
Because
after
he-
basketball games.
because
and
he
stuff
got a
like that.
boner.
Did he? Oh yeah.
Yeah. Which is normal too, because
Right.
like boys get boners when the wind shifts
Right.
direction. So like, of course he's in the shower with all of these boys and he gets a boner, like, and so this is when he's like, wondering
Realizing.
why is he attracted to his to boys, especially Elias, his tent mate, who's just really nice to him.
Yeah, and he's a football player, so it's like the last person he expected to be nice to him, because usually those are like the bullies at his school.
Exactly.
And Elias is just different. He's very nice and supportive and sticks up for him when other people are like messing with him.
Yeah. And it's funny because, well, it's not funny, but it's peculiar or interesting because all of his scout mates,
Yeah.
they all know that he's different. And
Yes.
they all kind of know he's gay before he knows he's gay.
Yeah.
Do you remember the Valley Girl scene?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Where they do the song.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're singing around the campfire, and each one has like their own little spin on it. So the song is, I said a boom, chicka boom. I said a boom, chicka boom. I said a boom, chicka boom. And then they'll say like one more time, and then someone else takes over, and they'll sing out like janitor style. I said a broom, push a broom. And then astronaut style. I said a blast me to the moon, swoosh, swoosh. Race car style. I said a vroom, shaft of vroom. And then it gets to Aiden, and he goes, like Valley Girl style. And they're all Valley Girl style. And he just keeps going. I said, like a boom, chicka boom. I said, like a boom, chicka boom. And his hand is, out in a
Which I
girly
loved it.
fashion.
Because you can imagine it.
Yes.
The singing. And first of all, it sounds fun.
Yeah.
But then, of course, they're just like, what the fuck? No.
Right. They're like, I didn't know this was Girl Scout camp.
And even the counselor is like, oh, okay, let's sing another song. And then that just leaves him feeling ashamed.
Yeah.
Which
But
is so sad.
And Leah sticks up for him there. He goes, hey, shut up.
Yeah.
Maybe you should go to idiot camp.
Yeah, because like these kids actually like him. Like they're
Yeah.
his real friends. Some of them. There's one bully.
But so I can see why he has a crush on Elias.
Yeah.
And then from there, it's just really...
So he gets beat up.
Okay, so because he's got he's very feminine, effeminate is the word.
Yeah.
Everybody makes fun of him for that. Even it gets to a point where even his troop, which has always stuck up for him, is like, you're doing it too much. I think you're doing it to be a victim. And some of them kind of turn on him. Mm-hmm. And while he's never stuck up for himself, he decides...
Well, you know why it was? It's because he wore his hair in a ponytail the way that counselor
yes.
did. Because he liked that. He's like, oh, maybe I should, explore this. And so he did. And he was like, hey, what's up, guys? You like my hair? And then the bully did not like his hair. And then they got into a fight. And, there it is.
Oh,
right
yeah.
there.
He does call him.
He calls him the F word?
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's got his hair up. And he gets called the F word. And then I think Aiden just kind of snaps.
Yes. He hits him first, actually, before that.
Oh, okay.
So he goes to take the ponytail out, and Aiden goes, get the fuck off of me, and hits him, which is good for you, Aiden.
Right.
And then the
Even
other
though
kid...
the counselors are like, we don't solve problems with hitting. I'm like, yeah, we do.
Right. Listen, if you put hands on them first, it's all fair.
Changes it.
Yeah. So that's where that comes in. And yeah, he kind of goes off on this kid who was his friend.
Mm-hmm.
He knocks his tooth out.
And that's when the bully is like, well, listen, defending why he hit him. He's like, he's going to get it way worse when he goes to high school. I'm just trying to give him a taste of it now, because they all know how different and, like you said, effeminate he is. And then this sort of puts him in a really bad mood. And he starts getting all emo, wearing his hoodie and stuff. And then that's when he finds out that his favorite camp counselor got fired.
Does he put the hoodie on after he kisses?
Oh, that's right. Did I skip that part? Go ahead.
Here, again, Elias sticks up for him and tells the guy, what the hell did you do? He goes, what did I do? I just lost a tooth, asshole. Why does he need to be different? It's like he's always trying to get people's attention. It's embarrassing. Elias says this. You're a real asshole, Mark. You know that? So he sticks up for him. He says, he's a nice kid. Lay off of him, will you? And the other guy's like, fine. It won't be my fault. It's someone's. If someone rearranges his face for him. Well, he didn't have any trouble rearranging yours. And then the counselor steps in and like separates everybody.
Right. So yeah, it goes to show like the progression of the relationship. And Aiden is a funny, likable guy and he's got friends, but you know, he's different. And Elias sees that and he respects that and, you know, he sticks up for him. And that makes Aiden really like Elias. So much to the point where they're in their tent one night talking about like how they really like canoeing or how the summer's almost over. And Elias is like, yeah, I can't believe you knocked that Mark's tooth out. That was fucking boss, dude. And he's like, don't remind me. I want to canoe under the stars sometime. Did you see the sky? It's so clear. And then Elias is like, yeah, let's go. And so they do. And so they have this like really special moment.
Yeah.
And the graphic or the drawings are so beautiful.
Which he's also the illustrator.
Yeah, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Same with Maia Kobabe.
Oh, that's right. They're both the author and illustrator.
Which is just so talented. But the illustrations here are, you know, just what you would expect at a camp with like such a clear sky and just billions of stars in the sky. And they're canoeing and there's no words. They're just like together in the wilderness. And they have a moment, just like a friend moment. And then they go back to the tent and they start listening to music because they were like bonding over their love of, what band was it? What?
Nirvana, I think.
Was it Nirvana?
Oh, wait, no.
Smashing Pumpkins. Oh, it was a bunch. Yeah, Nirvana was one of them. They're just, you know, bonding over their love of grunge bands. And so he just starts to get really excited.
Yeah.
And it shows like a fire because the book is called Flamer. So it's always, you know, they're always talking about references to fire and the flame. And so there's like a flame building up in his chest.
And they're really close to each other listening to the headphones together.
Because they're sharing the headphones. And then what do you think happens? He kisses him on the cheek. And it doesn't go well.
No. No.
So, I mean, this is a really vulnerable part in Aiden's character development. It shows how brave he was. He finally, like, acted on his feelings.
Right.
He took a chance. He kissed him on the cheek. He didn't, like, grab him. He didn't molest him. He didn't, like, forcefully kiss him on the lips or anything. It was just, like, a harmless peck. Like, if it was a boy and a girl, it would have been cute and you know?
And he misread it. You know, he thought they were having a moment, and it wasn't the moment he thought they were having.
Right.
So he's like, whoa. Dude, why did you do that? And so he's super apologetic, and I'm sorry, oh God, I'm sorry. I don't know. Elias is like, I think we should go to bed. It's been a long day. And then the next morning, Elias is gone. The bed is done.
He's, like, seen asking his counselor to change tents and stuff.
Yeah. And so now he feels really alone and isolated because now that's his...
And there's all these references to hell, too. Like, because he's Catholic, and so he thinks that he's a sinner and that he's going to hell because of his feelings that he can't help. And that's really sad.
Yeah, so then he's got a rough couple of days. And I thought it was very, like, also his counselor notices that he's down and asks him about it. But then he's just like, you need to start thinking about all the good things you have going on in your life.
Bad advice, dude.
Right.
Like, come on. But yeah, this is when he finds out his favorite counselor gets fired. And they even say the F word again. Like, I heard that teacher got fired for being a F word. And and then they even mention, like, the Boy Scout bylaws. Like, it's in the bylaws.
Oh, yeah.
Which I was like, oh my God, what? Like, that was in the 90s. And it was in the bylaws that you couldn't be gay and a Boy Scout. Which is so fucked up.
And here he is just having kissed another boy.
Yeah.
And hearing that this is, like, basically illegal to do.
And the guy was fired because someone intercepted a personal letter he had written to someone else about being gay. So yeah, Aiden is in a really dark spot.
He also has a pen pal that he keeps in contact with. And when the mail comes in, he doesn't get a letter from that friend.
So he feels like he's got no one.
Right.
And he tries to call home, and mom and dad are fighting.
Yeah, so it's like a whole bummer, right? Everything that could go wrong is going wrong for him right now.
And a lot of middle school kids can relate to that, like the end of the world. And sometimes it really does feel like the end of the world because their brains are being flooded with hormones, and the slightest thing like that can happen like this, and it's not really slight, it's a big deal. Like, it could lead to suicide.
Yes.
And that's what people need to understand.
And he gets back to his tent that night, and Elias's bed is not just done, but it's like empty. Like
he moved tents.
Yeah, all the bedding and everything is off. So clearly he's moved tents. And he starts thinking, you know, it's just going to keep going like this forever. On and on and on and on and on. Too short, too fat, not man enough, not white enough, not straight enough. I'll never be safe anywhere. And the imagery in the books are really nice. Like, a whole page is just black.
Yeah.
And then it's just him saying, I can't.
It really elicits a lot of feeling.
Yeah.
Even if you're not gay.
And so eventually he ends up going over to the chapel, and he brings with him a pocket knife. And he's standing in front of the altar.
And there's no words at this point.
Yeah, it's just imagery. and he pulls his sleeve down. It shows him pulling out a knife, a pocket knife, and he's thinking about cutting himself. And then again, the imagery, this is all just imagery, no words.
Oh, and then the flame comes to life.
Yes.
The flame inside of him. His flamer flame.
And it
which is
tells
based
him-
on like a comic book character, I think, but I
On,
didn't get the
X-Men.
reference. Oh, okay. But it's a
I
female.
love X-Men, yes. It's
A female character.
the Phoenix, which is oh my god, Jane.
Oh, okay.
Is it Jane?
I don't know. That went over my head.
Yeah, I love so I caught the reference, but so when this flaming entity shows up to him, he says, "Is this hell?" And it says, "No." Then why is everything on fire? It's the fire of life within you. This is your soul. I'm just so tired. I can't do this anymore. I'm weak. And the flame says, "I am not weak." Aiden says, "I'm so alone." And the flame says, "Not true. Elias hates me now. He thinks I'm disgusting. I could see it in his eyes." And the flame says, "What about Rob, Bobby, and David? They are your friends." "Are they? They wouldn't be if they knew. They would hate me, just like Elias hates me. You don't know that." And Violet has forsaken me. She never replied. "It's only been a few days. Give her time." "I have no time. I will be in high school soon and I won't have anyone to talk to. They'll mock me and beat me every day. Why not leave now instead of prolonging the pain? Even if all that is true, your family loves you, Aiden. You know they do. Could you watch your mother from the other side, weeping for the rest of her life? Would you leave the twins without the big brother they look up to? But my father, he doesn't love me." "Yes, he does. You can't see it now, but you know he does. Just remember." And then there's an image of him with his father when he was young. "Even if all of them were to forsake you, you are enough." And then the flame hand reaches out for Aiden's hand and lifts him up.
And so the symbolism there is just so strong that like he just like works through this and decides, I am enough and I am who I am and I'm different, but that's okay, and I'm enough, and I have people that love me.
And so this is kind of like an out-of-body experience he's having. So he wakes up on the floor of
the chapel,
and he leaves the knife behind. And then as he's walking out of the chapel, he runs into Elias, who's
been looking for him. Yeah.
And so that part is like really nice too,
because he pulls the bracelet that he made him out of his pocket. Because earlier in the book, Aiden made Elias a friendship bracelet, and he wore it until that kiss. Then he took it off.
Yes.
And so that really hurt Aiden's feelings. But then Elias takes it out, and he's like, "What does he say?"
Well, he goes, "Well, we didn't know where you were, and I was worried, so..." And Aiden says, "You were looking for me?" "Yeah, well, we all were." "Oh." And he pulls out the bracelet and he said, "I'm sorry I freaked out. You just took me by surprise there." And so they have this moment where they say, "Thank you, I'm sorry, I surprised you." Elias says, "It's all good." And he says, "Really? Yeah, we can still be friends, right?" "Yes, totally." And then they kind of walk off together, and it just shows him having the last few days having
a good time at camp.
Yeah.
And my favorite is like the last night around the campfire, they're singing again. And one of the campers, I'm not sure who it is, but they point to Aiden and they say, "Valley Girl style."
Yes.
And he's like, no, it's okay. And all of his friends, including Elias, encourage him to do the Valley Girl style. And he does it. And, everyone claps and it's great.
Yeah, it's such a good book. And it just shows that, there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, and speaking of light, it talks about, fire is like a huge symbol in this book, especially with the campfire. And it says, as a Boy Scout, we're taught to douse the flame with water until the coals are cold, to touch. And I think the phrase is, Scout regulation states that a fire has to be hand touched out before leaving it unattended. And Aiden sort of likens this with the fire inside of him, saying that sometimes even when you think the fire is out, you're wrong. And it shows the fire growing, and he leaves his tent and the campfire is still going. And he takes his suicide note and he throws it into the fire. Yeah. Which gave me goosebumps when I first read it. It's giving me goosebumps right now. And it just goes to show how much of a suicide prevention book this really is.
And the last, is that the last page, I think? Yeah. It says, "And there are feelings inside me that scared me to death. But today I discovered this fire isn't done burning."
And then it's a picture of him with his proud body standing in front of the fire. And he's smiling and he's brave and he's not going to give up.
Yeah, I love it because you could just tell he's like, "Yeah, I've got this. I'm going to keep fighting."
Yeah. And then in the afterword, it talks about the history of the Boy Scouts, which I was super curious to learn more. Are the Boy Scouts still this homophobic?
Right.
But it says, "Over the years, the Boy Scouts have become more inclusive of sexual orientation and gender, thanks to people in and out of scouting who made their voices heard. But when I was a kid, it was not okay to be gay. In 1995, the year in which this book is set, gay and queer people were routinely vilified, ridiculed, and hated." And we're seeing that come back in 2023.
And it goes on at the bottom and talks about how, like his character Aiden, he felt overwhelmed by this culture of hatred. Also, like Aiden, I once kneeled on a camp chapel with a knife against my wrist. I wanted my anguish to stop. I wanted to silence my fears. I was so scared of high school that I thought I would not survive it. Worst of all, I hated myself. But like Aiden, I found the strength to live. And although living is scary, when we continue to suffer, I would do it all over again to be able to write this book for you. To hope, to dream, to want love. These are dangerous acts. Fear and hope are bound up together inside of us, alongside our flaws and our divinity. In this darkness, we can find an inner light to guide us, and there is light in you, even if you can't see it.
So there's the proof right there that this is a real account that, people are living these experiences and they need these books to guide them through these experiences.
Yeah, and like you said in the beginning, on the front cover, it says, "This book will save lives." That's exactly it.
I'm sure it already has. Moms for Liberty and other groups that share the same sentiment of censorship are doing the opposite, taking these books away from youth, who have a hard time as it is already because of this flood of hormones into their brains where it's like everything seems like the end of the world, and they're way more likely to do a reversible act such as suicide than they are when they're 25 and their hormones have leveled off. It's these resources like this that we need to be giving our kids, in addition to other mental health services that we need to be providing for our kids.
Yeah, and these groups are stroking the flames of fear and of hatred, which will just cause more suicides. So think before you act, guys. If you really care about children.
Right. It's like you say you do.
Right.
Then you'll understand how helpful these books really are. So thanks for staying with us in this long double episode. We hope you enjoyed it. And stay tuned for our next episode, for our Juneteenth episode, where we cover
The Hill We Climb by Amanda Gorman.
And the ridiculous story behind its banning in Miami. So until then, remember, they can't take books away from you.
If you've already read them.